When you picture Abraham Lincoln, you almost certainly see the towering figure in a top hat, right? The face on the $5 bill or that massive marble statue sitting in Washington. But long before he was the Great Emancipator or the savior of the Union, he was a self-taught prairie lawyer who quite literally pulled himself out of the dirt. Today, in this explainer, we're going to map out the absolutely incredible transformation of Abraham Lincoln, from a backwards youth to one of the most distinguished, razor-sharp legal minds of his entire era.
And to really understand the kind of lawyer Lincoln became, we actually need to start near the end of his legal career, with one of his most famous courtroom moments. Just picture this. You're in a tense, packed courtroom for a high-stakes murder trial. A key witness takes the stand and confidently testifies that he saw the defendant, a man named Duff Armstrong, commit the killing. When the prosecution asks how he could possibly see a crime in the dead of night, the witness claims he saw it perfectly clearly by the light of the moon. It seemed like a totally open and shut case.
But Lincoln dismantled that testimony. And he didn't do it with some complex legal loophole. He used pure, practical common sense. He just pulled out a simple farmer's almanac. He showed the judge and jury that on the exact night in question, the moon was too low and the sky was simply too dark for that witness to have seen anything clearly. With that one brilliant piece of logic and a deeply moving appeal to the jury, he won a full acquittal for Armstrong. So it really makes you wonder, how did a man with almost zero formal education develop that kind of razor-sharp legal instinct? Part 1. A Frontier Boyhood, from a dirt floor to the courthouse. To truly understand Lincoln, we have to ground ourselves in his family's relentless physical journey across the American frontier. We start in 1809 in a backwoods Kentucky cabin. Then by 1816, a messy lawsuit actually challenged his father's land title, which forced the whole family to pack up and move to public land in southwestern Indiana. Finally, in 1830, a 21-year-old Lincoln migrated to Illinois, physically driving a team of oxen himself. I mean, this was a life defined by constant, grueling movement. And when we say frontier here, definitely erase any image of a cozy log cabin from your mind. When they first arrived in Indiana as squatters, his father hastily threw together what was called a half-faced camp. This was literally just a crude structure made of logs and branches, with one entire side left completely open to the harsh winter weather. The family survived, barely, by huddling behind a blazing fire day and night. These incredibly harsh realities built the foundation of his youth. Lincoln's earliest memories were visceral. He remembered flash floods suddenly washing away the pumpkin and corn seeds he had just helped his father plant. He remembered hearing the terrifying panthers scream in the dark woods, and bears actively preying on their pigs. He later described this period of his life as pretty pinching poverty. And worst of all, he lost his mother, Nancy Hanks, when he was just a ragged 9-year-old boy, leaving him to face a bitter winter without her. But a major turning point arrived with his father's second marriage, to Sarah Bush Johnston. She brought desperately needed warmth and order to the household, and she treated Lincoln exactly as her own son. He loved her dearly, later affectionately calling her his angel mother. And crucially for our story, she recognized that he had this unusual curiosity, and she strongly encouraged his emerging taste for reading. Section 2. Educated by Littles. A relentless thirst for knowledge. Talk about an uphill battle. On one hand, you have his parents, who are almost completely illiterate. Lincoln himself even noted later that his early surroundings provided absolutely nothing to excite ambition. But on the other hand, you have young Abraham. Even though his total formal schooling across his entire life amounted to less than one single year, his drive was just unstoppable. Neighbors actually remembered him trudging for miles on foot just to borrow a single book. Lincoln actually described his own schooling perfectly with this quote. He said he went to school by littles, a little now and a little then. His education was never a structured, formal path. It was a patchwork. He had to actively hunt down knowledge wherever he could find it, completely teaching himself how to read, write, and do basic math. So what was actually on his reading list? Well, it wasn't a huge library, but he thoroughly absorbed the few books he did have. We're talking Parson Weems' Life of George Washington, Robinson Crusoe, Pilgrim's Progress, Aesop's Fables, and the Bible. Later on, he'd add Shakespeare to his favorites. Now, these foundational texts didn't just teach him how to read. They honed his incredible ability to tell a compelling story and communicate really complex ideas simply. And those are absolute must-have skills for a top-tier lawyer.
Part 3. Finding His Calling, the Winding Path of a Restless Ambition.
Before he ever saw the inside of a courtroom, this lanky, 6'4" powerhouse of a young man went through a rapid-fire succession of odd jobs. He was actively searching for his place in the world. He started out as a rail splitter, physically building fences for his father's farm. Then he worked as a flatboatman, navigating goods all the way down the Mississippi River to New Orleans. After settling in New Salem, Illinois, he worked as a storekeeper, a postmaster, and a surveyor. He even enlisted in the Black Hawk War, where his peers elected him militia captain. And I absolutely love this quote regarding his military service. Lincoln later joked that he saw no live fighting Indians during the war, but he did have a good many bloody struggles with the mosquitoes. This kind of self-deprecating wit and storytelling charm won him friends everywhere he went. And as we'll see, it was that exact same charm that juries would eventually fall in love with. But then came the ultimate pivot. At one point, Lincoln actually strongly considered becoming a blacksmith. And, it made perfect sense. It was a highly physical, demanding trade that perfectly fit his massive strength. But instead, he chose the mind. He abandoned the idea of manual labor, taught himself grammar and mathematics, and dove headfirst into law books. By 1836, he passed the bar examination and officially became a lawyer. Section 4. The Prairie Lawyer, Forging a Reputation on the Circuit. Okay, so picture life as a frontier lawyer, because it was grueling. Twice a year, in the spring and the fall, Lincoln had to literally follow the judge and the court as it made its rounds. He traveled hundreds of miles over thinly settled prairie by horseback or buggy, bouncing from one tiny county seat to another. Most of these cases were petty, and the fees were incredibly small. But during this time, he formed some very successful legal partnerships, most notably with William H. Herndon. And here's a fantastic detail about how Lincoln operated. They kept almost no formal accounting records. Whenever they got paid, they just split the cash right down the middle, with zero money quarrels whatsoever. But things changed drastically for him in the 1850s with the massive boom of the railroads. Travel suddenly became easier, and his legal practice became a whole lot more lucrative. Lincoln effectively transitioned into what we might call today a corporate defender. He worked as a lobbyist to help the Illinois Central Railroad get its charter, and they liked him so much they retained him as a regular attorney. $5,000. That was the largest single fee of Lincoln's entire legal career. He earned it by successfully defending the Illinois Central Railroad from efforts by McLean County to tax its property. Hilariously, though, he actually had to turn around and sue the railroad just to collect his fee. But he got it. And to put that into perspective, $5,000 was a staggeringly massive sum for a man who used to shiver through the winter in a half-faced camp. He was well and truly in the big leagues now, operating at the highest levels of national infrastructure law. In one of his most brilliant performances, he saved the Rock Island Bridge, which was the very first bridge to span the Mississippi River. Powerful river transportation interests wanted it torn down, but Lincoln successfully defended it in court, securing the future of westward railroad expansion for the entire country. Over 20 years of practice, Lincoln became one of the most distinguished and sought-after lawyers in all of Illinois. And his trademark was built directly from his frontier upbringing. He was known for incredible shrewdness and practical common sense. Again, remember that almanac. But above all else, he was known for his invariable fairness and his utter honesty. These weren't just slick marketing slogans. They were the genuine core traits he developed by surviving on the frontier and riding that grueling legal circuit. Which brings us to our final thought today. The exact skills Lincoln needed to be president, the ability to communicate crystal clearly, to outthink his opponents, and to maintain an unshakable moral compass, none of that magically appeared when he got into politics. Those traits were forged in a dirt floor cabin, tested on the harsh Illinois prairie circuit, and sharpened in countless dusty courtrooms. So I'll leave you with this.